Hey, I'm Todd. Thanks for watching my video and do all that good YouTube stuff. Share it, like it, hit the notification bell, thumbs up, subscribe, all the things that you do. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video and saving some money perhaps. I also invite you to check out the links in the description for some long-term savings with the stock market and checking out the links for either E-Trade or M1 where you can save and trade fractional stocks, or Webull, which is usually giving away a couple free stocks for just depositing $100. So I strongly invite you to invest in your future and check them out. Thanks, and let's get to the video. 2011 Chevrolet Equinox, gonna do the transfer case. We'll take the wheel off, jack up the vehicle. We need to get it up a ways. Some pinch welds along the edge here, you can jack up on that. We're going to get the vehicle off the ground quite a ways so we can get that transfer case out. We'll take the wheel off and drain the transfer case fluid and take the axle out as the steps indicate. You're taking off this 35mm nut, and then we'll take off the caliper bracket bolts. There's one on the top, one on the bottom. They're 18mm. We'll support this and have it hang off to the side and continue on to get the axle out. You can also put a screwdriver in the fins of the rotor right here, and that'll lock it in place, and you can use a hand half-inch breaker bar and turn it off by hand. We don't have power tools. The bolts have a little orange Loctite on them, looks like. Alright, then we have a nut and a cotter key. Need to remove the cotter key and the nut, and then we'll separate the ball joint from the knuckle. Can usually pull this through, straighten out the fingers. I cut the end a little bit. On this end I cut it, but if you straighten it, then you can put it through the hole. And we'll take this nut off. It's 18mm, broke it loose. All bolts and nuts, as far as I know, are left to loosen. That's counterclockwise, right to tighten. So we're just getting this off close, pretty close, but drop the ball joint down, and then the nut will come out. Alright, jumping out of order because I did not get the ball joint done yet, but we'll get back to that, I'm sure. So alright, we're going to take this bracket off, probably 13mm bolts on both sides. Take the bracket off, drain plug, 10mm Allen, and we're going to drain the transfer case. So those are the next two things we're going to do. And we're replacing this because there's quite a bit of noise. Here's some debris on the magnet, which you always want to wipe away if you're just changing fluid. But we've got some maybe excessive free play in here too. Up in here too, I think, this one. Maybe. Not really sure, but anyway, it was making a lot of noise. And we got some free play. So, drain the fluid because that's probably how they want this core back, so we'll drain it for the core purposes. And it'll be less mess on us when we actually pull it out. But I'm going to need to go back up to the top of the engine so I can take the catalytic converter bolts out from up top. It goes up there. There's a shield up there, so I'll give you a shot of it. we'll be taking a heat shield off the top and then getting to the bolts or nuts. 2011 Chevy Equinox, getting to the catalytic converter nuts on the top here. Friction fit connector right here. I guess this maybe just pops off too, but I just took off the 8mm clamp here. This will slide off too, so. And then right down here, there's an 8mm clamp for the throttle body as well. We'll be taking that off. We're getting this off here. A couple of friction fit knobbies on the back side. Probably take this cover off as well. Friction fit. Take the cap off. I see more round balls that fits on. Right there, right over there. We get to probably take this bracket off, disconnect the oxygen sensor here. Looks like 10mm bolts for the heat shield. Disconnecting the oxygen sensor and pushing the pins through. Two bolts, maybe 13mm, I guess. We'll see here in a minute. Very fortunate to be in Oregon where there's not a lot of rust issues, except on the coast. Looks like one bolt may be broken. Doesn't quite seem like I can fit that over the oxygen sensor here, so I'm going to take the oxygen sensor out. Several types of oxygen sensor wrenches. This has a slot in it for the wire. See if it's enough. I'm not sure if it goes down deep enough. I'm going to go with another style, a socket. Kind of tight. I'm going to spray some rust penetrant or some penetrant oil in there and work it back and forth and get this baby out, hopefully. Alright, work the oxygen sensor back and forth a few times and it works itself loose and it's out. Hopefully this shield will come out now. Looks like one bolt is broken, so no big deal. We got 2 out of 3, not bad. Then we've got our nuts that will be taken off. I think there's maybe 4 total, or 3. Spray some penetrant on those and we'll zip those nuts off. 15mm nuts. Now we can go back down below. Alright, so I'm going to be removing the tie rod end and then hopefully the ball joint. I will be unfortunately using a hammer. I don't have the right tool. It is aluminum, but if you're careful it should be okay. Otherwise go ahead and buy yourself a ball joint separator tool. Okay, so while I'm letting the ball joint percolate, simmer there with some penetrant on it, I take these two 15mm nuts off. I take it off this rubber bracket here, and then there's a bolt up there, probably 15mm as well, and should be able to drop the exhaust down here. It's looking kind of tight, so we'll see how it goes. I want you to remove it, I do know that, so that's what I'm going to do. Got these bolts loose here, 8mm bolts. Again, everything's left to loosen, right to tighten. Left one in there till I'm really ready to get it out. But while I'm dinking around down here, break some bolts loose. Yep, alright, exhaust is coming out. Alright, I got a long extension, 15mm swivel. Yeah. Barely see up there, but there is a nut that holds this in place, and that's in the way of the converter. Keep it from falling down, I believe. So pretty tight fit. We're gonna loosen up that bracket, or actually take the nut off. I'm not sure how to put it back on, but I'm gonna get that nut off, get that bracket out of the way, and see if the exhaust falls down. Alright, so just a tight fit through here. The stupid stud. It's got a bracket for the transfer case, I believe. And there's another bracket here we'll be taking off. 15mm bolts. So, yep. I can keep going. Alright, so I've done fighting with that ball joint, so I got a bolt out of here. It's like a 21mm bolt and nut, and then a 18mm nut on the top, and a 15mm bolt that goes through there. A little prying involved, but not too bad. I'm also going to take this off, 18mm nut, and probably a 8mm insert there, Allen. I'll be taking that off to give me some free play right in here. So that's the plan. I'm going to get this stupid CV axle out of here and continue on. Well, not a lot of free play because it's still connected to the other side. So the axle is kind of attached inside probably. I'm going to use an air hammer, but you can probably screw the nut back on and put the nut on until it's flush with the end, and you can tap it with a hammer. Maybe you have a rubber or plastic mallet. Nothing to it. You got some kind of clip on here, might go on the inside of the wheel bearing. Keep an eye out for that. Pretty sure we can just pry that off of there. Then we get a pry bar in here and pry that CV axle off. Remove those two bolts there. We're going to take that bracket out of there. Take some more stuff out. Kind of generic, but my goodness. Probably an extension and maybe 15 millimeter to get those two bolts out. And then that bolt there for the bracket, we'll take that bracket off. That goes to the engine as well. Alright, we got the bolts out for that bracket, and we have one more bracket. Well, probably a couple more, but the next we're going to take is this one here. .15 millimeter bolt we'll get through here. We'll probably get most bolts through here with an extension and socket swivel. And at this point we do have the transmission supported here. It's not needed yet, but we'll be taking out this rear mount right here. So pretty much all the bolts you can see there. My 18 millimeter bolt on the left side there, then a couple 15s probably straight ahead-ish. We'll take those bolts out, try and get this bracket lifted up and out of the way. And hopefully save these two bolts for last. So we're ready to let it come down. All right. So this is loosey-goosey. Go stick it up there out of the way. Out of the way, and it is a little bit loose because I did loosen those two bolts there, so those two bolts will be it, and we can slide this out, I believe, and down. Finally. They were two 18 millimeter bolts. Already did loosen them, as I mentioned. Not sure how much food will come out. We did drain it, but we'll see. And we got fluid coming out. Probably some delicious transmission fluid, but there we go. It is out. Get a little view of things. That's a stupid stud. I think this is maybe the most difficult after the ball joint to get that nut back on there with that after that bracket. Don't forget the bracket. All right, we got our new one. We can lift into place. We'll probably make sure it's full of fluid and add fluid if needed while it's on the floor. It'll be much easier. Alright, so here's our new one. I pulled this out. It's already full. So put that back, the fill plug back in, and lubricated this seal in here, black seal inside, with some transmission fluid, and should be ready to hoist it up and install it. So when this is up in the air, this did move a little bit. There's some free play in here, so be aware of that. Don't force these bolts up here if they don't seem to go in right. You know, start all bolts by hand, so you can maybe finagle this a little bit as you need to line up all the bolt holes so they go in real nice. So we'll be lifting this up and putting it into place. You have to turn it a little bit to get the splines to all line up. Boom. So I'll reach up there and drop that transmission mount bracket back into place and hopefully get all those bolts in there lined up properly. And one suggestion I have for you, maybe they're different lengths, maybe they're the same. We find out they're mostly the same, but I still marked them. One's marked with black. This one has 2 dots on it, and this one has nothing on it. That one's obviously a different size, so I made some different marks on there so I can put them in the right holes right away. Put some marks on that transmission bracket. So we'll drop that transmission bracket down. We'll put the big bolt in probably first and do all the bolts loosely by hand a few turns. Then once we're sure that all the bolts have been started, we can tighten them down, and they're tightened down, I think, to 37 foot-pounds for the transmission mount bracket bolts, or all the transmission transfer case bolts. So you want to consider getting new exhaust gaskets. These ones can kind of be reused, I feel. These metal crush ones may be less likely, not as good to reuse. And that goes right up in here. So I'll throw new gaskets up there and then bolt it in place. I think these are both, nuts are 37 foot-pounds, and I think these are also 37 foot-pounds. If not, you'll hear about it. Pretty much reverse procedure to install. I'll be dropping some numbers, some information for you for torque specs along the way, but it really is reverse procedure to install. So we'll get you some numbers along the way here. Alright, so putting this back together on the Equinox, got the exhaust bolted up, 37 foot-pounds, and I actually can feel the stud down here. If we reach down through here, for me, I can feel the stud, so I could probably put the nut in my hand and reach up here and get the nut started, which would be a nice thing to be able to do instead of trying to reach between the transfer case and the exhaust down below. So that's my tip right there for putting it back together, is to do that. I'm not sure you could break it loose up there. Maybe you could try that. So there you go. And my next tip is to make sure this bracket is installed tight before you install the 3 nuts up top tight, because this seems to have swung over to the left. I can't even get my can't get my 1/4-inch socket even in there. Going with a 1/4-inch and 15mm on a swivel, and I can't even get in there. So install that with the nuts loose first on the converter. And just pushing the axle on should just slide into place. So it's got a clip on there, so there'll be some resistance, but give it a few good pushes once you feel the splines engaged. Turn it back and forth a little bit to make sure you feel the teeth, the splines engaged, and give it a few good pushes. It should push into place. You know, just pushing it like that. So that's it for that. And we're going to put this back in. Of course, the trick in here is to get this to rock into the slot, but I think it's pretty doable. I don't know if I can show it on the camera there, but that's what we're going to be wrestling, is to straighten this out. Maybe get a large channel lock so we can grab it and give it a little twist to slide into place. So there's that. But it is going in. I think that's going to work. We can get it close. We can probably stick a screwdriver in here or something and pull it in. We can pull it in and then straighten it too to get one bolt in. So pretty darn close there. And we'll line that one up too. Just a little pushing and prying. Then we'll retorque that stupid nut and put the cotter key back in. That's what we're doing there. Alright, Alright, these are 52 foot-pounds. They do want you to use apparently new nuts and bolts. I didn't have any, so of course, so putting Loctite on the nuts. So we'll tighten those down as soon as we get this other bolt in here, right here. We'll tighten this to 85 foot-pounds with some Loctite on it as well. So they want you to tighten that 89 inch-pounds and then 155 degrees tighter. And when you're putting a castle nut and a cotter key together, you always want to continue to tighten. Don't loosen it to make the cotter key line up. You always want to tighten it. Well, I would just snug it down tight and line up the hole and put a cotter key in the hole. And we'll continue to put it together. And this is an 8mm 5/16, kind of like this. Oh, that's an Allen, that's right. So use an 8mm to hold this and turn this in case everything is turning. So that's how to install that. Like an open end wrench on here, and then maybe an open end wrench or a socket on here if you need to. Tighten that to 44 foot-pounds. This gets tightened to 55 foot-pounds. 140 foot-pounds for the two brake bracket bolts. $140 foot-pounds for the lug nuts. Put the tire on. You want to tighten them in a crisscross pattern. Put them on as tight as you can when the vehicle is up in the air, then drop it down so the tire touches the ground. Once it's touching, so the wheel won't spin, then you tighten it down to your 140 foot-pounds. This is 152 foot-pounds. This is 151 foot-pounds. And you put a screwdriver in here, up here, like in the vane, something sturdy, and then you can hold it while you tighten it down. That's the trick for that. So once you tighten that, get your lug nuts tight, that should be about it. You got fluid in your differential. That should be everything you need to know, hopefully. You have enough information to replace your transfer case on your 2011 Chevrolet Equinox, perhaps other model years as well. Good luck to you. I'm using a 120-pound torque stick on this Chevy Equinox for the transfer case. It'll get me close to the 140. But not least, saw this on the ground, about 35 foot-pounds as a guess. I didn't see the specs in my procedure, but make it tight. All right, back to the wheel tightening.